abandoned the 5-year gap after putting significant time into it, right?
Sure.
So
it's still, I think, those major points, I don't think he's going to change. But anyways, we should probably not, because if Glen's back, we should probably go so he can get to bed.
Thanks.
Hey,
Sorry.
Glen.
We were just on the line while we were waiting for you to come back. So.
Talking about Game of Thrones again.
Well, what are we going to do while we're waiting for you, right?
Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. This is a podcast which goes into a range of topics, a lot of topics within geek culture, within pop culture. So this podcast will be discussing one of the latest Disney reimaginings of the 1992 animated classic Aladdin. So the latest Will Smith vehicle. My name is Glen, Douglas Rivers from the podcast Face and Fire forums, and I'm very delighted to be joined by David.
David H. on the forums. Hi.
And Matt.
Hey, it's Blue Armor on the forums.
And also Adam.
Hey, it's Adam Jon Snow, a.k.a. the Fresh Prince of Dorne.
So if we start just with what our thoughts were on the movie. So usually we use a lemon cake score, so I was thinking for like an Aladdin appropriate one. I guess starting with you, David, how many rubs of the lamp would you give this?
That sounds rude. I'm gonna give it 5 on. When I first saw it, I was gonna say 4.5, but I rewatched it and I loved it. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but it's all that I needed it to be. You know, it's not quite as magical as the remake of Beauty and the Beast was, but Aladdin's my all-time favorite movie, and it's also one of my all-time favorite Broadway plays, the new version. And all they had to do for me is not fuck it up, and they didn't. And on second viewing, I actually think it is as good as the original. They managed to keep nearly all the magic and splendor from that original, but and even the musical numbers unexpectedly lived up to the original. And we got a little more depth and a little more excitement, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. You know, the tone change is definitely interesting because some of the really silly and laugh out loud stuff from the original is sort of a like softer humor, I think, and there's a little more heart and a little more menace. And that was cool. That worked for me. So, and the other thing I want to say is I'm glad that they really addressed the catfishing that both characters did, but especially Aladdin. So, and I have to give Naomi Scott the MVP of the movie. She's amazing. And, I mean, her voice soars. She has a great screen presence. And, of course, Will Smith didn't screw it up. He was actually good. So,
along a similar vein, actually, I kind of compare it to watching the Deadwood movie this weekend, where, you know, just on a pure enjoyment level, it was such a blast, and kind of, you know, lived up to everything I hoped and expected from it. And so in that sense, I would, you know, give it a 5. But if I'm looking at it more critically, you know, I would give it a 4.5, something like that. I'm a little different from David in that, you know, I like it more than the Beauty and the Beast live action one. It's actually the first like Disney remake here that I've gone to see in theaters. The other ones I've kind of waited for it, just on Netflix or whatever. And so yeah, so like the highlights, all 3 of the leads were great. And sounded like I was shocked kind of halfway through as to how similar the actor playing Aladdin's voice sounded to the what I remember of the original movie.
Definitely,
it's truly impressive. And I always had a good feeling about Will Smith going in, just because they needed someone to, you know, Robin Williams as a genie is essentially playing Robin Williams with magic, and so that's the type of like actor they needed to bring in, where he's just doing his own thing that he's, you know, been doing his whole career. And so yeah, it really worked that, like, you don't wow me up, like it has such a good like swag to it that just works. And yeah, the other so both the main songs, A Whole New World and Friend Like Me, were just everything I wanted, and kind of the main reason I was going to see the movie. And Prince Ali was another good one.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the critical moments that I can understand, they didn't quite bother me as much, but I can understand people's hesitation with Jafar, and how he was portrayed. I kind of like the former thief aspect to
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It seemed like he wasn't acting to his full, like the actor himself wasn't achieving his full capabilities as an actor, and it just kind of felt a little off. And then the other one is kind of Jasmine's final song. I just felt was placed awkwardly, where I think it would have served better kind of earlier in the, like, she had like kind of like two additional new solo songs that I felt like should have been kind of switched, where the longer version should have appeared at the beginning, and then that final moment where she decides to turn back should have just been like a real quick reprise that you would see in a musical of her being like, I'm not getting up to the point where it's like, I'm not gonna stay silent, and then she
Mm-hmm.
just turns around and does what she does in the rest of the scene, rather than having her that whole weird walking through and having all the men disappear around her, and
Yeah.
just hitting us with a metaphor over that
Yeah.
blunt object was a little much for Disney. And so yeah, that's it. General thoughts.
I'll give it like a 3.5. Wishes for more wishes, rubs of the lamp, whatever. I really enjoyed it. Like you guys, I guess this was the first of these like live action Disney remakes that I did see in the theater, and I kind of was in to see. My son is at that age. He's seen the cartoon version. My wife loved this movie. She was into it. We were all into it. So I really enjoyed it. I think that my hesitation was whether or not Will Smith's genie would work, and it did. So the rest of the movie plays along there, and the main cast works well. Jasmine getting a friend, Dahlia, I think was her name, that worked well. A surprising plot line with the genie having
Yeah.
a love interest that I didn't ask for. That actually, you'd think is terrible, but really wasn't terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was pretty good. The songs are about what I expected. Live action versions of the classics. They hit the right notes, and I felt that I don't know. Jafar was kind of had some issues, but at least his motivation was more than just like, I'm gonna rule by marrying Jasmine.
Yeah.
Like he was like a warmonger or something. So I'm like, okay, he had something else going for him.
There must have been about 4 different trailers for the movie
Mm-hmm.
over the past few months. So I kept up with each of them, and I was expecting. I was still wanting to see it, but I was expecting maybe an average movie, maybe just like good, but not really as good as the original. It was always
Mhm.
still in comparison. But I was
Yeah.
just, my expectations were very exceeded. I loved the movie, so I thought it was great to see a live action version of it, like all the work that must have gone onto the movie, like all the magic, all the sets, decoration, the story was great. I loved the small changes they made to the story too. I think in some cases it improved the story too. The soundtrack is great. We'll talk a bit more about that. I think the cast too. So we can talk about that a bit later. But I was expecting to go in thinking, oh, it'll be the Will Smith show. But I think the characters do have their own presence and command their own attention, which is what I love about the movie. I have seen some of the live action remakes. So Beauty and the Beast, I've watched The Jungle Book, and those always just I watch them just out of curiosity, but it's maybe movies I won't watch again. I would rather just watch the original. But with this movie, it is close, but I would say overall I would give it 4.5 rubs of the lamp. It's very close to the original, but I loved the movie. What we could actually start talking about is the Disney. So this must be, I think it's the 11th Disney reimagining so far. There's like a long string.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's. I was looking at it on Box Office Mojo.
Some more than others, though. Some are more like Maleficent isn't really a remake.
What are your thoughts on those movies? Do you agree with them, or do you think it's overdone?
I personally love them. I think here's the thing: if you're gonna remake a classic, there's kind of three reasons to do it. One, and obviously for Disney, this is the most important one, is the money. Because they've all done well. Beauty and the Beast made a billion and a quarter. This one's already heading up to $500 million. So, you can't blame them for wanting to do it. And it's working, and people are doing it. So, if people are going, why not do it? You know? In fact, the remake of Beauty and the Beast has made more money than any other Disney movie, not counting like Star Wars and Marvel, other than Frozen, which beat it by a hair. So I can see them wanting to do it. I can't blame them, right? But I think if you're going to do it, artistically, there's kind of two reasons to do it, right? You first of all want to add more depth and a little more background and flesh out the story a little more. And they definitely did that, particularly with Jasmine and to some extent Jafar and that new character Dahlia and some of that stuff. So if you're going to add more to it, then that's great. I feel like personally they did more of that with Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella, but there was enough of it that I thought it was worth it, right? Then the other thing is, of course, to modernize the story, particularly giving women more agency in all of these movies and giving them more to do, maybe getting rid of some of the, borderline racist stuff in the original Aladdin, some of that stuff. And that clearly was something they were looking at doing here. Jasmine's story is almost completely changed, and I think for the better. She's definitely a more modern princess, quote unquote, and she's definitely a more modern woman. Whether it fits in, the times of the Arabian Nights, well, we can debate that. But I thought that was fine. And getting rid of some of the borderline racist stuff is probably a good thing too. So I think in this case they've done all three. They made money, they added depth, and they modernized it, which to me makes it worth it. I know some people are angry and whatever, and I don't care. I loved it, and they don't have to
people are going to find a reason to find controversy in any of these, especially if the source material is some semi-controversial to them. Right. And we're like a bunch of white guys sitting here talking about an article saying that they didn't do Arab culture right, or I can't really speak to that.
But it was better than the first, certainly.
I don't think it it didn't seem overly offensive or negative to me as far as portrayal of Arab culture. It's also a fiction, and they smartened everyone up because it's it's live action. So they acknowledge, like I said, they acknowledge the catfishing. One of my favorite little bits was can you show me where Ababwa is here on this map? Right. I'm thank you for that. Right. I love maps,
and I would love to see. It was just funny seeing it actually written out Ababwa. It's come on, how do you even spell that?
Yeah, Genie, your game was weak. You should have made him a real country on that one.
The casting controversy was also in the original 1992 movie because a lot of people thought that Jasmine and Aladdin were very different compared to the other characters.
Right.
Even
and very white.
Yes.
In fact, you realize that
their voices.
Yeah. Well, that their voices are different from singing and talking, and in fact, Lea Salonga actually plays the singing voice of Jasmine.
Oh, does she really?
Yes, they actually have both of them. Actually, both Jasmine and Aladdin have different singers than.
Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I didn't realize it was Lea Salonga though.
Yep. She's fabulous.
Great. Yeah, I don't know how you can play about having her.
Right. Well, I think it was more that you have a white girl doing the regular voice, and
the regular voice is just a normal
Yeah, but that's voice acting in general and has been for a long time until they kind of got the. Well, I don't know if it's been a problem. If you get professional actors that are voice actors, you don't know who they are. It's when they're like, Matt Damon is the voice of,
Right.
so-and-so. That's the problem. So
that's the main,
and that's become the big trend, is getting actors, and you're like, oh, I clearly know that, like like I was talking earlier, like, oh, this is Harrison Ford. You can hear his voice, and if they're then it stands out. But if it's just someone who's good at their job, I think you don't know what race they are and you don't care.
Although, obviously, for a live action, that's not going to be the case. And they definitely, went out of their way to try to be multicultural with the cast. I mean, even the bit players and everyone in the background, which is good. I mean,
there is some issue with that, though,
right.
Apparently.
Well, part of the thing, too, is that there's a question of whether it's supposed to be Arabic or Indian, and they decided that frankly, the original Aladdin myth is not actually from the Arabian Nights. It's actually Chinese.
Yeah.
So
really,
but yeah, and then so what they decided to do for this is kind of go for the meeting of where the Middle East meets India. That's kind of what they were doing, is kind of a cross between the cultures, and you can see that kind of throughout the movie in the styles of everything. And
yeah,
they definitely
I
did that with the actors.
Aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that aspect of it. That was one of the things that attracted me to the although I feel like the marketing for this movie was terrible, except for the very last trailer. It was basically everything looked bad until the last trailer or whatever. One of the last trailers, when I was like, all right, this is fine. But I like the inclusion of kind of the Bollywood influences. That was
definitely
a fun thing for me. And that's what I was going into this not caring too much and just allowing for the mix of cultures and on that vein in general, I just take a step back. I'm just if you don't think this is doing a good service to your culture, that's fine. I get it. But if you're just going in there and saying F all that, this is fun, I get that too.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those things where I can, I will always understand criticism of Disney for its underlying issues that have been going on for years.
It's also interesting that I don't think we've heard as much criticism since the movie came out. A lot of it was before, and I think once it came out, I haven't heard as much. Maybe just people had already said it, but I feel like, I think they did it. I think they did it well, and I think like I said, it's interesting how, the critics, are really mixed on it. It's got 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience is loving it. It's over 94%, and the cinema score, which are actual exit polls they do, audiences gave it an A. It's actually funny, because of the bad reviews, they were all predicting that the movie wasn't going to do well, or at least as well as they'd hoped it would. And then it turned out it did 1.5 times what everyone was projecting. And the second week as well.
Yeah, box office prediction probably the last 5 years has been pretty terrible. A lot of the professional firms that come out saying, "Oh, they're looking at a $50 million opening," and it just smashes it because they don't really understand what's going on. Yeah. Did that first scene with Will Smith on the boat where he's narrating this story to his kids? Did any of you guys have any indication that would come up later? Or I thought this was just. Instead of the marketplace, song in the beginning, right. The Robin Williams version, this is just their way of introducing it and having Will Smith, sing his song as putting him there. But this is just nothing that'll come up again.
Right. I thought that was clever.
I did because in the original movie, they did plan to have that reappear at the end, but it was just cut.
Yeah.
So I was just making that connection that they did plan to do that in the original, so I think they will actually see it through for this version.
And we did.
So you thought that when you were in the theater?
Yeah, I sort of thought that. I was thinking frame device Titanic style. We'll see this, at the end. That he'll be on the boat and he'll finish the story. Although I didn't.
Will Smith he'll throw the diamond into the sea.
I didn't make the connection. It would be Dahlia. That would be, his wife.
Right.
Oh yeah, no, I completely forgot.
Yeah, I missed it.
That's what tipped me off. Where I knew it would come back immediately because they didn't show the woman's face.
Right.
I was like, oh, they clearly didn't show her face on purpose, so that'll come up later. And then as soon as he starts the flirting with Nassim later in the movie. I was like, okay, then this is where that's gonna go. It was just one of the, I don't know, it comes from watching too many movies, I think.
Yeah.
I just like immediately picked up, like, oh,
Right,
Yeah.
Trick.
I'm like that with sci-fi
Yeah, because
stuff.
on a second watch, it stands out really obvious, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, having watched it a second time, yeah.
Oh, plus I never spotted this. I just read about it. But did anyone notice that the boat was shaped like a lamp?
No.
Oh, no.
Not even the second
That's
time
cool.
I didn't notice.
I was trying to figure out what kind of boat it was because it looked like more of like an Asian design almost to me.
Right.
And then like there was like a big galley that went by them, and so I was like, "Where is this? Where is this at? Is this the Mediterranean? What's going on?"
No, it's and that's the key. Like this is all fantasy make believe.
Right.
And
Right.
You just need to try. You have to. I know everyone's like tempted to try to throw it and place it where it might be in the real world, but that's the wrong way to.
There is no
to look at
Agrabah.
it.
Did y'all hear about like
Yeah.
a year ago? There was a poll that someone did where they asked Americans, "Should we bomb Agrabah?" And like half of like 40% of Americans thought we should, which was kind
Right,
of
yeah.
bizarre.
Well, I believe their policies are dangerous, David.
Exactly.
Stan Konya said they'd be willing to drop bombs over Baghdad.
Yeah, so this movie is one of the big four of the Renaissance. So, of course, along with The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and The Lion King. So, of course, this
My
you
favorite.
could tell that Disney are hoping for similar numbers to Beauty and the Beast with this movie. Because earlier this year they did try Dumbo, but that didn't exactly meet expectations. I was going to mention that it really does surprise me because usually Disney is one movie per year,
Right.
but for some reason there's 5 this year.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm surprised they
you
didn't
have to
space
remember-
these two out. Oh, sorry. I'm surprised they didn't space these two out, given that these two are probably two of the biggest. You know, these two and Beauty and the Beast. You'd think they would have throw that one next year. You know.
You have to remember that
Personally-
Disney used to be a much smaller studio. Not that it was a small studio necessarily, but now it encompasses like 40% of at least like the blockbuster tentpole market share.
Right.
So with Marvel and Star Wars, and like they just have to get their movies out and try not to compete with each other for like 2 weeks, like because you don't get like months where your movie gets to run. You get like a week where you make your money, and then if you get a good second week, that's like a blessing nowadays.
Yeah, that's why, like, immediately after the weekend John Wick premiered, like they immediately claimed like Memorial Day, in 2 years, 2021. Like that's it, we're taking that weekend. No one else
Yep.
join us.
Right.
Like it's becoming like a race as to mark.
Yeah, they fight.
Weekends
they fight for these
blockbusters.
spots.
They play chicken
Yeah.
too because they put like two of the big ones up against each other to see who will back down. But
And they dare each other to move, and people do move sometimes. So
Yeah.
you don't want to have like you wouldn't want like Avengers Endgame and like if like let's say you had like the finale of like the Harry Potter movies and the Lord of the all on the same weekend coming out and be like fuck it, people choose. Like they would never do that.
they either choose or sneak from one to the other and don't pay.
They'd be like
Hunger
see all
Games,
of these,
go.
and we're going to space them out so you can see everything.
Yeah, I am surprised though. I mean, 2 months later though for Lion King just seems a little crazy. Like, are people willing to spend that kind of money on movies now that they're so expensive? That
Toy
often.
Story 4.
Lion King's coming in like 2 months.
Like when exactly? Like, I was about to say because like we have Spider-Man next month. Like,
Right.
Jesus. And then what else? Like what else?
Yeah.
They got? Like they're doing like a. I'm so confused about talking about Maleficent. Like, isn't the Maleficent one that's coming out with Angelina Jolie?
There's another one with her.
Yeah,
I don't
there's
really
a-
understand. And they've got to be working on that Little
So
Mermaid.
they did
I mean, that's
Yeah.
got to be the next big one.
Plus, there's Frozen 2.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's
Frozen
right,
2.
Frozen
Yeah.
2.
Lion King
And
2 is July 19th. Or Lion King Remake. Let me re-say that so you can edit it. Lion King Remake is July 19th.
So that's like
so that's 2 weeks
Spider-Man?
after Far From Home.
Right.
Oh, 2 weeks. Jesus.
Yeah, because I think Spider-Man's like the first weekend in July.
And and Toy Story 4 is June 20th.
Fuck me.
Frozen 2 is November 22nd.
Right, that's plenty far off.
So part of this too is they're relying on the family audience, certainly, but
Right.
because these family films were built on, like, frankly, our childhood,
Right.
in the late 80s into the 90s, they're also relying on us to go just as ourselves with our friends, with dates, which will boost that audience, the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, I went at like 10 o'clock at night, and there were like almost no kids in the audience. And the theater was full.
Oh, and just maybe a show of quality of the movie, because I noticed that they did publish the box office estimates for the first weekend. It was 86 million.
Yep.
But then the next day, the actual numbers was 91 million, and that's always a good sign for a movie.
Yeah.
It kept going up. They were all surprised at how well it ended up doing. And part of it was also, I think, good word of mouth. I mean, like, everyone I know at work who's seen it has loved it. Everyone I've talked to, except for like one of my theater friends who was like not happy with it for all the reasons you'd expect.
Well, I mean, as I said, my wife, this was one of her favorite movies, and like she left, saying like, maybe this was even better than the original. So, I mean, that's not something that you're going to get very often with something like this. And I think that a big part of it is that they kept a lot of the like wacky and kind of magical, zany elements that, were a bit over the top, but also grounded them a little bit. Like just like the Cave of Wonders, right? And instead of just being a lion's head that comes out of the ground, it's like sort of recessed into a mountain. And it's it's still as animated and it disappears and all that, but like it feels more rooted than, just being out on it. So like little stuff like that.
But I think they cut out some of the really zany, like, I mean, particularly Iago is not.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, it didn't bother me when watching the film itself, but I can understand if you were disappointed. This, especially when they got like all these other movies with Lion King and Jungle Book, where talking animals are fine, and then all of a sudden with this movie, it's like, nah, we're not going to do that.
I think it was more like, they still had him talk. He was still talking, but I think it was just the tones. I mean, he was like a sidekick helping, and he was a little sinister, whereas in the original, he's absolutely silly and wacky. And I think that's true. I mean, same thing with the Sultan. The Sultan was like dumb and silly, and here he's like.
But here, you weren't even sure if he was talking at first, because probably 60 to 70% of what he says is literally parroting something that someone else just said, but like with a snarky tone or something. So a few times he makes a comment and you're like, oh, okay, they're communicating kind of, but he's not nearly as involved. And I mean, I think it worked all right. I think like the changes they made with carpet were good.
Well, if we start talking about the music, so we've got a brand new soundtrack for the movie released on the same day. So mostly the same songs as you would expect from the 1992 original, but there's some remixes, some new versions of A Friend Like Me, Prince Ali, Arabian Nights. Plus we have a brand new song which is called Speechless, so the solo song from Jasmine. What were your thoughts on, I know that Matt, you've mentioned it before, but Adam, what were your thoughts on Speechless as a song?
I'm going to agree with what Matt said, is that I think the song was fine. I just think it was very awkwardly placed, and it was very clear of like, we're giving her moment right now. And I mean, they've been kind of giving her moment like the whole movie. Yeah. They could have, it just, there wasn't time to do it the way they did it. I mean, in the middle of this tense scene where, Jafar's taking over and then she's like, climbing up like pillars and people are disappearing and you're like, is this the right feel? I just think it was misplaced.
I love the song, and I at the time liked the movie, what they did in the movie with it, but I think what you're saying does make sense. I mean, I do remember at some point it was like, okay, people are disappearing, this is all a dream? That's weird.
Yeah. It's very hard to understand what's actually going on or not going on, and then they zoom back to her, and it's just like the tension gets cut, unfortunately, where it shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you think, oh wait, this is all a dream, so does none of this matter? I don't know, but in general, I loved it. I thought it was really good. Her singing is amazing in it. And if you didn't know, by the way, she actually sang the version that you hear in the movie live as they were recording it for most of it, the whole first part and half of the second half. Obviously in the soundtrack they re-recorded it for the release of the records, well, whatever they release it on now, digitally mostly in CDs, but she actually, and that's like never done in movies, and they did for that. They thought it would, she had the voice to do that, and apparently she did.
Yeah, I think she said it's the only thing that they did live, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even
the only movie that ever did that was Les Mis. Like everything else is pre-recorded just because it's easier.
By the way, for those who don't know, Alan Menken, who did the score of the original movie, also did the score of this movie. So all the music is by him, including, all the background music and whatever, which a lot of it, when you listen to it, is actually just the other theme songs. Like, Friend Like Me, you'll see little bits repeated all throughout, which I thought was cool. And if you didn't know, they brought in the songwriters from La La Land, Greatest Showman, and Dear Evan Hansen, Ben Pasek, and Justin Paul. They were the ones who did the new lyrics. They did all the lyrics of the new Arabian Nights, which are almost completely changed. A few little tweaks here and there, and then they did the lyrics for Speechless.
Did we mention that Guy Ritchie directed this? I didn't realize that until I saw the credits, right, which was very surprising.
I knew that going in. I was always worried about it, but nah, he's fine. Like it's just one of those things where, I really liked Guy Ritchie's old stuff when he was coming up, and now he's just transitioning to these major big movies, and you can't fault the guy for succeeding in his career, right? And moving on to blockbusters. It's just disappointing that we won't get other smaller stuff.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Lamps.
His English gangster films are just so much fun, and it's a very kind of niche genre that you don't get a lot of, and it's just too bad that we don't get those anymore.
And it was also the thing that made me okay with it also was that it was produced by let me start there. The thing that got me was that it was produced by Mark Platt, who did a lot of those TV live, like Grease and all those that were the good ones. Okay. The good ones he did. So
right.
One more thing I want to say about Speechless. One thing I want to say about Speechless before we move, because it's I think probably all we have left to say about it, unless others want to. But it is important to note that, do you know where the idea for calling this song Speechless came from? There's one of the most misogynistic lines from the original movie has Jafar saying to Jasmine, "Speechless, I see, a fine quality in a wife." So they decided to use this as a direct response to that.
I mean, Jafar's
does he take her voice away at some point, or am I just making that up?
I know they do the Little Mermaid.
Well, I know she's in a
he transfers her into the Jabba slave outfit, right?
She's in an hourglass and she's drowning.
Oh, so. Right. The hourglass. Yeah. You can't really hear through it. Okay.
Right. This was before that though, but even then he says something and she doesn't know what to say, and he says that's Speechless. So that's exactly where they got the idea to call it Speechless, was to turn this misogynistic thing into an empowerment, which I thought was cool.
Because Jafar in the cartoon is much more about getting himself a 15-year-old wife so he can be Sultan, and it's just real creepy. Not necessarily historically inaccurate, maybe, but also not great for a young kids movie.
Yeah.
What about the other songs? So Arabian Nights, which has gone through a lot of controversy in the past. There's been a lot of versions of it. So are you all aware of the original lyrics for Arabian Nights?
Yeah, well, they changed even in the DVD release.
I remember them.
They changed one of the lines even on DVD.
I remember the julienne fries or something.
Yeah, no, but there was a line where they say where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home, and that got changed before they even put it on DVD.
Oh,
Yeah,
was that
that's
like
right.
a controversial line?
Yeah,
Yes.
because the
I don't
racist
remember.
meant to be racist, so they changed it to something about the heat is oppressive or something, and that's
Where
what
it's
was
flat
better.
and immense and the heat is intense.
That's it. Yep. They changed
Well, I
almost
mean, because
all
they
the
talk about
lyrics.
cutting
of
off
this
your
song.
hand for stealing, so
Right.
I don't know.
But there it was even like if they don't like your face, they're just going to cut your ear off.
Yeah, like that song goes so quick as a kid, you just are like, I don't know, it's like,
Right.
it's just pulling you along with the rhythm, like you don't remember most of it.
Right. Although they
I
completely
guess I
changed.
liked the Will Smith version. I thought it was good.
Yeah, all new lyrics by our La La Land group.
Hmm. And you've got some rap remixes of Friend Like Me, which during the movie and at the end credits, which I loved.
Yeah, I don't feel like,
Yeah.
listening to it more, I don't feel like it was really all that different. I mean, there's not much rap in it. I mean, the thing I noticed most is that he doesn't sing as much of the choruses, probably because he can't sing that fast, because it's amazingly, it's like 200 beats per minute, this song, or like 190 something. It's really fast. And like, because there's a whole part at the end of, what was it, of Prince Ali that's super fast, and he's just sort of like, whoa, ooh, where like the crowd, where the people in the chorus there are singing all these super fast lines, and he's just like, whoa, instead of actually singing them, which I thought was funny.
I mean, I don't know, man. Big Willie Style's all in it. I think he could keep up if he wanted to.
Right. Well,
I just think it was a difference in tone, like inserting kind of his style into it.
Yeah.
There was only a few like kind of like rap bridges in there that worked fine.
but I mean, they kept it remarkably
Like the whole beginning's
true.
reworked, right?
Of which song?
Of a Friend Like Me, like the whole
A
first
lit.
like 20-30 seconds is reworked.
Like
that's
in
more of
tone
like
a little?
it's more of like a talk instead of a sing.
Well, he first talks and then they completely start over again, remember? He first talks and then they start over and then do it again. And he first is just doing it while Boo is playing the cymbals, and he goes, "Oh, that's not good enough. Okay, well let me," and then he pulls it all out, and then he still kind of talks, but sings it more, and then he really jumps into doing it. And I was also really surprised that they kept it as fast as both of them are probably almost exactly BPM the same as the original, because I listened to the two back to forth and was like, is this slower? Because I thought it was, but it really isn't. He really goes for it. And I was actually surprised even in the video, everything's moving super, super fast. You know, I was worried that it was going to be toned down in hip-hop, which isn't my thing. And there's hints of it, but it really is true to the original, I think. Both of those songs.
Oh, I agreed very much.
Yeah, that's general. Yeah, that's pretty much my thought on it. Where I thought they just did a really good job of keeping it very similar, but just letting Will put his style on it, and it just worked really well. That's kind. I mean, this is the main reason I saw the movie is for kind of these musical numbers, and they did not disappoint at all.
Yeah,
right.
And that's just kind of like. That's kind of my overall thought with these, where I'm not, I've obviously seen all the Disney movies as a kid, but they're not stuff I, rewatch over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so I've, been kind of picking, what movies I've seen, solely based on what scenes I want to watch in live action. I mean, and that's just kind of a personal preference of mine. I just prefer watching live action stuff over animated style. The animated style. So it's just kind of like that's kind of where the enjoyment of these films comes for me, is to, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Beauty and the Beast movie, like you better believe I wanted to watch the, fucking dance scene in that. Like,
yeah, of course.
with them in the ballroom.
Yeah,
like,
I mean with Hermione, right? So
right,
yeah.
I guess, David, how does it compare with the musical? The Broadway musical?
Well, the Broadway musical is interesting because, I mean, first of all, I mean, you can't be Robin Williams. So the genie has to decide to give it its own energy and its own thing. Yeah. So James Monroe Iglehart, who started on Broadway, he totally infuses his own personality and his own energy, but he has all the energy of Robin Williams, if not more, believe it or not. He's crazy on stage. What's interesting is in the Broadway one, they actually expanded a lot of the songs. Friend Like Me is like 8-minute number on Broadway, whereas in this movie they're almost exactly the same. There might be an extra line or two, but that's about it. They're only most of the songs are 2-3 minutes, just like the original, whereas they just upped it on Broadway, which I think makes sense because you're on Broadway. You expect that.
The sight gags take longer to set up live than they do in the movie.
Right. Well, they did even more. I mean, if you ever have a chance to look online and see if you can find Friend Like Me, there's renditions of it, and even all of those are edited a minute or two, and it's like 8 minutes. There's a whole bit where he goes into a riff of Disney love ballads, where he does like Beauty and the Beast and something from Hunchback and a few other things. It's really cool. He totally he got the Tony for that song alone, frankly. But in this, I thought it was good. The jokes are different, but it all worked, I thought. It was very, very... I was worried that it would be toned down with him, and I thought, it's still pretty slapstick, things happening left and right all over the place. These are still showstopper numbers.
I can get you a Prince, man.
There's little changes in the lyrics, which I thought were cool. I like some of the little changes.
Gag for me.
Yeah, that was fun. But I like the changes in the lyrics slightly that he did to give it its own personality. Like in the original of Prince Ali, there's a line, "Heard your princess was a sight lovely to see," and instead he goes, "Heard your princess was hot. Where is she?" Little bits to give him a little personality difference, but still worked. Before that, One Jump Ahead. I thought that was so true to the original, but yet they changed it a little because Jasmine's added to it, because Jasmine he hasn't met her yet. So they got her involved in it, even though she doesn't sing, which I thought was a neat move and gives her more to do, which is nice. But he sounds so much like Brad Kane in this song, right?
I thought One Jump Ahead is one of my favourite improvements to the song. Because in the original, I don't really like that song. That's one that I sort of skip. But with this one, I like the modification they made to it. I think it's just a bit more catchy and has a bit more to it as a song. But yeah, with the music, Friend Like Me, I like what they've done with that. One Jump Ahead and A Whole New World is great, but then I don't think it compares to the original version of it. And
yeah, I agree. It's still good though, and I thought
it is great.
It worked, and video wise, it worked too. The actual what they filmed, I think it's just as magical as the original. It's not, the singing's not quite. She's not Lea Salonga, but she's still really good.
Yeah, true.
What about should we talk about the finale version?
I've never even listened to it.
The video went viral, and it's huge because they got Zayn from One Direction on there to do it, and then they got he chose who we wanted to do with it, I guess, and he picked some reality TV star, Javia, and it's so weird because they're great singers, but the tone is just so wrong. If they'd written a new song where Aladdin realized he completely fucked up by lying to Jasmine, and she's all sad and mad and upset with him, and they have this moment of I've ruined it. Their performances would be perfect for that song. But that's not what A Whole New World is. A Whole New World is oh my God, look at this adventure we're going on. We're on a carpet flying all around, and I'm falling in love, and I'm so happy, and this is amazing. And if you watch the video, Zayn looks like he's crying. It's so they're sad and morose, and they're warbling for an American, what do you call it? They're warbling for an American Idol audience. He's just trying to be look at me, the bad boy Zayn. He's hot, and it did what it needed to do, which was got the attention of all the teeny boppers who will now probably go see the movie. But if you want to sing a song, at least know what the fucking song's about. If you want to have an interpretation, that's fine. But This is a song with words like shining, shimmering, splendid, and soaring, tumbling, freewheeling. And how do you, like, sing that without even smiling once anywhere in the freaking video? Like, so bizarre.
I mean, two things. One is I hate music videos where they've got two stars in it and they never interact.
Right,
It's like,
especially this song.
It's obvious they've recorded in separate studios, so you never see them, interact, speak, talk to each other. That's one thing that annoys me. But also, when I go to the movie, just like in general, go to the cinema, I always like to stay behind, watch the end credits, because I knew there would be a friend like me, but also A Whole New World would have liked to have seen that. Plus, just stay behind to see some of the credits and see if there was maybe an end clip, if that was there, because there wasn't.
Nope.
No. Okay, well, no surprise there. But sadly, the people I'm with are like, right, movie's over, come on, let's go.
Oh, no, I see. Well, it's interesting. There isn't that much. The credits are actually shorter than in a lot of movies. The first bit is the whole The Friend Like Me remake, where they all dance to it. And then they play the Zayn Javia version of Whole New World, and then it's kind of over. So it was there was nothing after it. But what's interesting though is that during the whole Friend Like Me, like there's all new video filmed for it. So that's kind of your closing credit scenes. But that's right at the beginning of them. So once that's over, you can go and, if you want to listen to them singing it, you can go to YouTube. And see him crying about it. One of the things is, I don't know if you heard, they actually did write 2 other songs for this that they didn't end up using in the movie. Apparently Jafar gets a song earlier that would have presumably given him some backstory that they ended up cutting out, which I really wish they hadn't, because that would have been really interesting. And then there was one other song that was supposed to be Aladdin and Jasmine, so it was something like kind of after A Whole New World, and I don't know what that was going to be about. I wonder if we'll see him on like the DVD or the Blu-ray or home release or whatever.
I thought Speechless was to be a duet, but they changed their minds so there was a Jasmine solo.
No, I don't think so. I think it was Always Men is what it was, so... Oh, and since we're talking about music, I don't know if dancing counts. How much did you love those like Bollywood dance number homages? Like the one in the middle where they're dancing together, and then the one at the end on the end credits. Like that was so Bollywood, wasn't it?
Oh, I really loved the end credits.
I thought both of them were awesome, but oh well. Hopefully Blu-ray extras. Maybe.
Although in saying that, I always hope that there will be a lot of extra features, a lot of great behind-the-scenes moments, but then Disney DVDs can be disappointing at times. Sometimes it's just like the movie, maybe a cut song, and that's it. Although the Blu-ray 3D combo is usually really good. They put a lot of effort into that, but they're super expensive. So
you got to wait for the anniversary platinum edition release.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they're like,
get you to buy it 6
We've
times.
been hiding them for years.
Right. From you. You got to get it now before it disappears, which it doesn't need to. We're just doing that to trick you into buying it now.
Are you guys interested in buying the DVD when it's released? Would you watch it again?
No.
Oh,
Disney Plus.
Yeah, I'll either stream it or I'll...
Yeah,
whatever.
it'll be on Plus, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do it on something like that. Because, I haven't bought a Blu-ray in I don't even know how long now. I don't even know if my Blu-ray... I don't think my Blu-ray player is even connected at the moment.
Yeah, PlayStation. That's why.
Yeah, I'm very selective on what I buy. I still do buy, I bought Infinity War, and I'll buy, these big movies that I know I want to have. But only if, they're at a good price and they have, a digital copy with them. So, Black Friday sales, I can go spend $30 and get a bunch of movies,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we move on to characters?
Characters sounds good. So if we start with the newest character, Dahlia, what were your thoughts?
Love her.
I thought she was really funny. She was.
Yeah.
I thought I want kids. That was my
Yes, that
one
was
of the
cute.
favorite lines. In the
That was
movie.
cute. I love she like planned out, and we'll have a boat. It'll be 2 stories, and we'll go. And he's like, no smaller.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine too.
And suddenly you're connecting all the dots.
Yeah, I mean, she
Yeah,
was
that
probably
was
one of
good.
the funniest characters in the movie. I mean, her little bits like when he comes to visit to ask her out on a date, and he's like, "One moment," she turns yes to Jasmine. That was cute.
Yeah,
And
no, I'm a huge fan of Nassim Pedrad in general. I'm always happy to see her in more stuff, just because I feel like she doesn't get enough work these days. So, she was great.
And she gets to be the genie's happy ending, so to speak.
Phrasing? Are we not doing phrasing anymore?
I'm talking Disney happy ending. Get your minds out of the gutters. This is Vok. Okay.
They have 2 kids. Yeah, I thought her utility was great in the story. They used her well. The character was good. The actress was good. It allowed for Jasmine to have that moment where she can pretend to be her handmaiden and
I do some more catfishing.
I read some articles which were before the movie was released that they had. It was understood or thought that Dahlia was going to replace Raja. That this was like from a few months ago, like 6 months before the movie. That Raja's not in the movie anymore. It'll be a human best friend for Jasmine, which obviously didn't turn out to be the case. But
although she does take some of the attention. Like in the movie, the original movie, Jasmine would have been talking to Raja and going, "Oh, Raja, why can't I?" Blah blah blah. And here she can talk to a real person.
Yeah, but Raja doesn't really do anything.
Yeah,
in either version.
He does less in this, I think.
Yeah, I know. I wish he had essentially killed. I mean, I guess it's a Disney movie, but I wish there'd been like a scene of him, protecting her at some point.
Could have ripped someone's throat out.
Yeah,
well, he tried.
I think it's just a cool concept where, even though she's in a world where women don't have a lot of power, she just randomly has this this crazy bodyguard that can help her kind of get out.
That's totally tame with her.
Right, yeah.
He does off screen attack Prince Anders. Remember when he's like, "Oh, kitty, kitty," and then he
I guess that counts.
But Prince Anders seems to be fine later, so I don't think he did that much damage.
Exactly. Well, I mean, he did go in to try to protect her from Jafar, but Jafar knocked him away. We don't know what Jafar did. He disappeared. We don't actually know what happened to him. we didn't see him.
Does he not reappear in the movie?
He does, but we don't know where he went, what happened. As far as I remember.
Yeah, well, he just teleport him to a pocket dimension, whatever.
Wherever tigers go.
Overall, I like that actor who played Anders. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's been been in other stuff. And I thought most of his humor worked pretty well. However, there were I'm not a huge fan of awkward humor, so there was kind of a significant chunk in the middle of the movie where I was just kind of looking away from the screen, just being like, all right, can we get through this? I thought it was a little overboard for my specific taste, but is what it is.
One of the things I thought interesting about this character, we might as well move on to him because I think do we have anything else to say about Dahlia? One of the things I thought was really interesting about Prince Anders is that he's probably the only character in this movie that's lighter than the original, as opposed to darker. Because in the original, it's not technically the same character, it's a different suitor, but that suitor, goes to, whip a child, and, Aladdin stops him, and, he's, he's much dark, he's dumb and whatever, but he's a little darker in the original, whereas here he's, just silly, kitty, kitty,
I mean, that's a general, trope in movies, and it's always nice when they move away from that, where, kind of the other guy that the main love interest is competing against. In the past, they've always just had to make him just, the biggest asshole in the world in every way they can, and it's much better when they just say, like, you know, he has some good qualities, he has some bad qualities. He's not a purely evil human being who's just the worst of the worst. So,
and like Dahlia says,
appreciated that.
And like Dahlia says, it's not like you even have to talk to him; you just have to marry him. You know, one thing I think will be interesting is that if you think about it, this is actually the only genuinely European white character in the whole movie, and he's like a bumbling, silly idiot. I'm sure those like incel alt-right culture warriors are going to get pretty pissed off about it. But then again, are they actually going to come to see this movie with all the word of like all these feminist overtones and all that? They're probably not seeing it anyways, are they?
You know,
Yeah, I don't think there's very many of them in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm sure
But this is the
I
kind
did
of thing they
read-
get upset about, right? You know, oh, you're making white guys all look better.
I'm sure I did read that there was reports of basically someone white in the movie. If it's there was uproar about it, and
Of course.
I was looking out for it, and then realised, oh, when that character appeared on screen, oh, that's who they were talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I saw that about the
Oh, yeah,
controversy after the fact, that like people heard about the casting and were like outraged that a white person was cast, and I'm just like, you know, in the end, none of this stuff matters.
Yeah.
Like for the box office, right? People go to see it and they figure
Right.
out what actually happened in the movie and decide for itself.
Right. And apparently not, given how well it did, so.
Right, yeah, but we still need to. It's something you need to just mention, just because
Yeah.
there can be issues with it. Because and it was something like it was also something I hadn't heard about, because it's not like I've been really following the course of the movie, of the production or whatever, but just from listening to a podcast, apparently there was there were rumors about like kind of brown facing, like just the background extras or whatever.
Right.
I have no
Yeah.
I have no idea how true they were, or if it actually
I know.
happened. It's it's one of the stuff I don't have enough information to talk about, but they were at least out there. Thought I should bring them up.
Aladdin, what were your thoughts?
You know, it's funny, when I first saw the pictures of him and heard the announcement, I didn't see it. I don't know why. There was something about him, it just didn't click with me. But I think, having watched it, he totally embodies Aladdin, I think. He does a great job. You know, he's definitely, you know, a little flatter musically than Naomi Scott, but that's fine. I mean, she's amazing, and he's not going to hold up to her, I don't think. But he does fine in his two songs, and he has the heart and the acting chops he needed. And I thought he was fine. And yeah, oh my God, he sounds so much like Brad Kane in those songs. From the original.
Yeah, it was rather uncanny. And yeah, it's kind of like he did a great job, and I think we would praise him more if he just hadn't been overshadowed by
Right.
Naomi Scott and
Exactly.
Will Smith. Like it's just
Yeah, yeah.
he just happens to be the least of the trio.
Right, even though the movie's
even
named after.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Right,
I thought he did a great job.
The difference
still.
between yeah, exactly. It's just a
I
difference
didn't even know. I didn't know who
between
it was
being-
that was cast going in, and it took about a minute and a half for me to be like, okay, yeah, he's Aladdin. It works.
Right, exactly. Not even.
I mean, I don't know his name now. I can't say his name. I don't know his name off the top of my head. Rules. I
Mina
know
Masood.
the other two names.
Mina
Gotcha.
Masood. Oh, and by the way, did
Yeah,
y'all
no,
notice? Did y'all notice that they like dressed both of them up a little bit? We don't have like shirtless Aladdin through the whole movie, and we don't have we don't have Jasmine
Yeah, there's much
showing her
less
midriff,
skin.
and Jasmine not
Much
showing her
less
midriff
skin.
through the whole movie.
Yeah, we don't get the classic
The costume was
outfits
very
for either of
good.
them.
Yeah,
It would
and an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like live it seems a little more exploitative than it does when you're a cartoon. You know, even on Broadway, it's a little bit like on Broadway they totally like pick like beefy worked out guys to do that, and and then Pretty Women was showing off her belly and all that. And even on Broadway, it's a little exploitative, but with a wink and a nudge. I think for a movie like this, they made a right choice.
Yeah, that's part of what Broadway is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and her wardrobe is just great in this movie.
Yes.
I mean, really, everyone's was. I mean, even the scene where where Genie's making him a prince and going through
Yes.
the various outfits.
Oh,
And it's
that
like,
was
that
fun.
isn't right. But like,
No.
I'm like, no, those were all pretty good. I mean, some of them were a little ridiculous, but
I did like that that Aladdin gets a little. They added like a little more at the beginning, where I would have liked a little backstory for Aladdin, which we didn't get. But I did like that he actually goes to visit her one time before that, like that extra whole scene where he breaks into the palace to meet her. Like, I thought that really added to it, so it's not so much love at first sight, I saw you once and I want you now. Like, they had that moment where they really connected again, which I thought was kind of cool.
yeah. Then he steals another thing from her.
Right. But he does it, in this case, to be I'm showing you I'm coming back kind of thing. Which I
Yeah,
thought
he's
was-
the dashing rogue.
Right.
Yeah, good shout out to it's like, oh, I left behind a sock or whatever,
Right.
gotta retrieve that.
And-
Come back to see you.
And plot-wise, of course, it gives her a reason to be mad at him because he never shows up because he gets captured and taken to the Cave of Wonders.
The one change that I really loved was centered around Genie and his story, and it really brought back to life the beginning when he tells his children the Arabian Nights tale.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the original, he wants freedom, and in the end, Aladdin does wish for his freedom for that final wish. But the genie still has magic. He can still
Right.
transform anywhere. He can travel the worlds, so he's
Right.
still all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
So they can do the TV show.
Well, of course, they needed that for the sequels in the TV show, like you said, yeah.
That's true. Whereas with this movie, he's just transformed into a human, and he can continue on a normal life, which I really think goes full circle with the story.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's all about that. The reason why he tells that story in the first place to his kids is they're saying, "Oh, I wish we had that boat," and then it's sort of like,
Right,
"Be careful
right.
what you wish for."
I do like how it closes off the story. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it a very complete narrative. And I mean, I guess I figured he would just still have his genie powers or whatever, because that's how the original movie ended. But I mean, earlier he asks, like, "Hey, I just want to be human." So I mean, you know it's coming, I guess, if you're paying attention. But I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. A couple of the changes, like for instance, that Genie in the first movie is really upset that he changed his mind and he's going back on his promise, and he's really upset that he's not going to give him his freedom. Whereas in this one, Aladdin thinks that, but he goes, "No, you're breaking my heart. You're going to keep lying to her." Like, that's what he's more upset about. And in fact, even then, at the very end, after he thinks, like, I've blown it, after they save the day and everything, he's like, "Okay, well, why don't you use your third wish to be, a different kind of prince, or to do this, or to do that?"
Right.
He doesn't even think that, and then that surprise moment with Aladdin says, "No, I'm going to set you free," was awesome. And it was much more earned that way, I thought.
Yeah, I liked. Because he expect a betrayal at the end. I kind of like that, where his overall, his referencing thing. I've been doing this for 10,000 years. I've seen this, I've seen that. Everyone makes the same mistake every time. It's like, "Oh, you're going to drink from that cup." I thought that was
So he rolled
that was
with it real quick.
A great line. Yeah.
Right. And he totally spends a lot more time than in the original trying to talk Aladdin out of catfishing her and telling her the truth, and that's like his constant narrative, where it's like just a hint in the original. Here, like, that's kind of his arc, which I think makes their bond even stronger, I think, and makes the whole story between the three of them work better. It gives it more heart.
He sees the diamond in the rough, like, potential in Aladdin, and so his real goal is to make sure he stays the good man he can be, and kind of like being the best version of himself, and that really strengthened, as you said, the bond between them. Right,
and even though the other thing, speaking of Aladdin, is one other big change is that in the original, he does say, "Oh, I'm just gonna keep lying, but in this one they added a reprise. That's it. Let me start there. So they added a second reprise of One Jump Ahead, where they do where he does the riff raff street rat. Where in the second reprise, he actually says, no, you know what? I'm going to tell her. I can't keep lying to her. And there's an actual, like, they added a little song there, little moment, a reprise of him making that decision.
Yeah, then he realizes he doesn't have the lamp.
Right. So he was going to go do it. So in this case, you kind of at least think, well, he earned it. He did the right thing. Or he tried to, but oops.
Yeah, do I get credit for that? Maybe.
Right. At least his intentions are there, so you can like the character better. You don't have to be like, no. I mean, there's a problem with a lot of these old Disney movies. Is Beauty and the Beast is basically what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry.
Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, that's it. Beauty and the Beast is basically Stockholm Syndrome, the movie, and this is basically Catfish, the movie, and they're both awful if you think about it. And Disney has to kind of work their way around trying to make that work better. And at least here,
how does he lose the lamp
addressed it
in the original?
I don't even know.
He has a following out with the genie, and the genie goes back in the lamp. So Aladdin says, "Fine, stay there," and just smothers him with a pillow, and then just walks out the room. But Iago gets the lamp.
Right. Which he does. Well,
oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, Iago does get it the second time. Because it changes hand a few extra times in this version, too. Because Iago gets it when he's big Iago, and then... But then before it... Well, we'll probably talk about that when we talk about Jafar.
I'm about to say, that whole scene, that whole scene was like unnecessarily like long just for the thrill of the chase. But
I liked it.
I'll mention that later. Shit. Now I lost my.
We've kind of moved characters. We've moved characters too.
Here.
We've been bouncing around between the three of them.
I know what I was going to say. Yeah, there was. Right, yeah, there are kind of aspects about how the story winds up where, it's truly like a Shakespearean comedy where a lot of stuff just conveniently like falls into place and people are just like, yeah, we forgive everyone's all cool now.
Right.
Let's just go.
And in some cases, with the lamp, it literally falls into place a few times. Yeah. What else? Should we say anything else about Genie? Anyone else have anything?
Choice of Will Smith.
Worked perfectly, didn't it? Sorry, go.
Yeah, I thought that Will Smith was a great choice. Like, I think big stars, like, to carry a movie, it was like an excellent choice. And actually seeing on screen, it did work perfectly. But I guess it did make me think, could anyone else have done it? Carry that?
I don't know.
Star power to the movie.
Yeah, I was skeptical, but I went in skeptically hopeful, and he did fine. He was great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of someone else who can bring the energy,
right?
That he brought, but also has the acting talent to pull off the gravity of the situation when need to be.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's not a lot.
Yeah. I think the hardest part is kind of mixing the manic energy like with just the star power swagger,
right?
And not a lot of people have that. For example, like old Jim Carrey like has the the manic thing, but he doesn't really have that like powerhouse presence about him,
right? And I also thought the next thing... Go.
It's like if you put someone like Kevin Hart in this role, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm saying is like you could see like, oh yeah, he could do some of those Genie songs real fun, but then the rest of the movie would just become like laughably bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The thing too that I thought that surprised me actually is that I think Will Smith's Genie had a lot more heart than I was expecting. Some of his more crazy moments get really like mellowed with his heart, which I liked. And not some of that's in the plot, where he actually helps him more and whatever. But some of it is just in his performance. I think it more often he tones it down where Williams probably wouldn't have, but it works because he's toning it down like to connect and bond with Aladdin,
Yeah, it's honestly just nice to see like Will Smith in a good movie.
This is what I was just thinking.
Remember, when what was like the last like good movie
Men in Black.
I saw that he was in.
Men in Black, maybe?
It was whatever the one he did before 7 Pounds. Like, I do remember that. Like, I remember like watching 7 Pounds and just being like, oh man, this is it's a bad turn, and I feel like he hasn't done really
the Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes, that's the one. Correct. That's exactly the one. That was a great movie.
What you have to remember about Will Smith is that he can really carry a movie. I mean, you've seen like a movie like I Am Legend, and he really is a great actor. But he had a deal for almost a decade. I think it was Sony that he had an exclusive deal with, and it felt like it just sort of sucked the life out of him having to make certain movies and not being able to make other movies. And so it's nice to see him away from that deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Bright was one of the first movies he made outside of that. That Netflix movie, while, not the greatest movie ever, like he was good in it. The energy was back, but he did a lot of these, like, I don't know, trying to win Oscar type movies that weren't really like his speed, I guess. I mean, what did he have? Hancock and Men in Black 3 were probably like his best movies in a decade where he looked like he was having fun. Mm-hmm. And that kind of says a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just one of those actors where I sometimes think his personality gets in the way. It's kind of he could, obviously every actor has to have some sort of ego about them to do what they do and be good at it. But I felt like sometimes his gets in the way where tries to have too much creative control over the projects that he chooses, and it leads to his detriment. Where
wasn't there that story about them filming in New York for whichever movie it was, and he had like a 3-story tall bus park that took up like a whole block and was loud and was like spewing smog everywhere, and like all the neighbors were complaining because he had to have like all the comforts of home. It's like $1 million like tour bus or whatever it was.
I'd believe it.
We move on to Jasmine. It's now rather than Jasmine having the right to marry, it's actually Jasmine's pursuit is to be Sultan in place of her father. Mm-hmm. So rather than if she marries Aladdin can then be Sultan through her. She would be, of course, the Sultan, and that gives her the freedom to rewrite the laws in which she can marry a non-prince.
Right. Although she doesn't actually think that at any point. But
that's true.
One thing I thought was interesting, though, is she doesn't want to be Sultan because she thinks she deserves it or because of any of that. She thinks it's because she really loves her people and she wants to do right by them, which I thought was a really nice touch. She's not just, out there for look what I can do and like for herself. She thinks that she understands the people better, which kind of doesn't make sense when you think about the fact that she's been locked up for most of her life. But it worked. I think I liked that whole bit. There were a bunch of changes to her story, which I thought was neat. In fact, we find out that the reason she's been locked up is because her mother was killed, which I don't think was in the original, and I'm assuming that would have been by Jafar. Which is, we don't know, but doesn't that seem likely?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Don't really remember exactly the exact plot points with that.
Well, we just know that she died, but she also was from that, what was that the other realm, Sherabad, that Jafar is after all the time.
Oh, that's right.
So, which is actually something I'll bring up later with Jafar, but I also really like... Oh, sorry, go.
The one small change that I noticed is when she's at the market stall, she's presenting to just be a commoner, and she sees the 2 kids, gives them the buns. Mm-hmm. So rather than the guy trying to cut off her arm, it's just, he wants that bracelet from her wrist, so a less violent Disney.
Yeah. Yep.
Although a little silly that she doesn't know how, the economy works.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're that rich, it probably wouldn't make. I mean, she never has to buy it. When has she ever had to buy anything ever? You know,
right? Yeah, but yeah, it's just like that whole scenario just seems out. Like it's just off. Even though obviously the chase afterwards is awesome. Great, but but the fact that she gets in trouble for stealing doesn't make any sense at all if you think about it for 2 seconds.
And it also goes against the thing I said earlier.
It's a serious crime. And
it also goes against what I said earlier too, with the whole I know what's right for them, I care about them. You have no idea how they even live. You don't know that they pay money.
Yeah,
but that's one negative. One thing I did like is that in the original, it's hinted that she figures it out, but here it's clear that she figures out that Prince Ali is Aladdin. You know, where she makes the line, she goes, "Oh, look, is that Abu?" And he goes, No, he wouldn't be here. And she's like, see, I knew it was you. In the original movie, I think the only thing where there's a bit where, which is in this too, where he says, "Do you trust me?" And you kind of see in her eyes, maybe she knows.
No, isn't it pretty clear, though? Doesn't she call out Abu, the same way?
Does she?
And maybe it's the same thing where he's like, "Oh, Abu, oh, crap, you got me."
Was that in the original? I might be forgetting that. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it's a different setting, but
okay. Well, then you can edit that whole part out. Then. So I made a great point that's not true. Oh well.
Right. Yeah, and that's where you get the second the second double lie where we hit that point where I'm just like, oh Jesus, and even though that's this is how rom-coms work.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I am Aladdin, but really I'm not. Aladdin was the facade, so I'm going to double catfish you now.
Yeah, it's just one of those things you have to get through. And it happens in any movie like this. There's always always got to have that strained conflict for about 20 minutes in the middle of the film. You're just like, all right, we got it. Now let's skip forward back to the happy bit, please.
Yeah.
And when Aladdin tells her that I'm actually a prince, but I'm just pretending to be normal, just to see the people, and she says that she does believe that, but then you can tell that she doesn't, which I thought was an interesting side part of it, that she really doesn't believe that.
She seems to me to be like, well, maybe. She wants to believe it. She wants to
believe it, but she knows it's not true.
Yeah, it's kind of like that discussion with Dahlia, where she then thinks about it for 5 minutes. She's like, he was lying. Shit.
Right.
And then it's by that time they got other shit to deal with. So
right. One other change with her I really liked is that she starts to go through the wedding, but she doesn't intend to because she's looking at his lamp the whole time, and then she grabs it and takes off, which was, obviously perfect timing. She jumps over just as Aladdin's coming back on the carpet, but I liked that she got the agency there to actually make a difference, even if they do end up losing it again shortly. But
right, that's the main flaw with that scene, where it's just at that point immediately Jasmine could become the owner of the lamp and get the 3 wishes
exactly,
and then still give it back to
rub Aladdin. That shit and end it.
Right.
Yeah,
well, at this point, does she really know? Yes, he's rubbed it and she made a wish, but does she know how this works? It's not clear.
No, but he does.
That's the best way. Right. Well, but they're flying around through the sky being chased by a giant Iago, so he doesn't have time to go, hey, rub that frickin' lamp.
Well, it's a 2 second thing.
Obviously.
Rub it!
Obviously, he can't do it because he needs to save his wish for the genie, but she could do it. Get the 3 wishes, end it, and then give it back to Aladdin.
But he could do it, though.
Wish.
He could quickly wish to undo everything Jafar has done, and then give her the lamp.
And then give her
genie. Right, you wish.
But do you trust her? I could see why you wouldn't. I only trust myself to free him, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there's kind of no good answer to this. We just sort of have to. It was bad plotting, and we just have to stick with it. And it gave us an extra 5 minutes of chase, and who's going to get it, and
Yeah, and the scene at the end with convincing Jafar to change himself to into a genie is good. It's just that the method to get there wasn't. Yeah, it was just poor execution. I mean, we've honestly been skirting around it this whole time.
Yeah, let's get to Jafar.
Move to Jafar here.
Can I just say 2 words, though? Hot Jafar is a meme. He's so freaking hot, especially as a shirtless genie at the end. But he was so hot. I mean, come on. If I was forced to marry him, I think I'd manage it somehow. Oh, no, I have to marry this hot guy. Damn. Okay.
Opinions expressed on VOK do not represent VOK's own. I will say that, yeah, when he becomes like shirtless genie at the end, I was like, this is like, he's like the young Pope over here. Like, I did not realize.
Right.
Dang.
Oh, I noticed from the moment I saw him in the first announcement. But that was a meme, though, didn't you see? There were, like, memes going all over the internet, like Hot Jafar. And, in fact, there were even back then some people saying, wait a minute, if she has to choose between him and Aladdin, that's a tougher choice than in the original movie.
Goodness.
God.
Oh, there were lots of memes, and he's been like shirtless in a few movies, so there were memes of pictures of him and gifs of him all over doing stuff, all over the internet, right as soon as it was announced. In fact, he was probably the only actor that was announced that wasn't controversial, other than maybe he was too young, you know? Everyone was like, oh, well, maybe he doesn't fit at all, but that's fine.
What about the choice to not make him disguised when he first meets Aladdin?
Yep.
So when Aladdin survives the cave, and then he just introduces himself to Jasmine, the Sultan, and then Jafar's right there, and he doesn't really react in a "this guy almost killed me" type of way.
Yeah, because Genie says like no one will recognize who you are, you know, at least initially or whatever. They sort of gloss over that so that they can have him as the old man disguise stealing the lamp later, which I thought was a nice little rework.
I like that. Yeah, I mean he gets some backstory here. He has no backstory in the original. I mean, we get that he used to be. The best part was that he used to be a street rat like Aladdin. So he gets to be the like, you know, juxtaposing him and Aladdin, where they both ended up in their worlds, and you know who's good and bad, and what he had to do.
So what I don't understand about his motivation here, and I don't know if they didn't have enough time or just didn't care. But so he's like wants to send them off to, you know, invade Sherabad, their ally. And to me, I thought maybe that was because if he gets the Sultan to do that, then he can like overrule the Sultan and try to become the Sultan through coup and being like, hey, this guy's crazy. He attacks his best friends.
Actually,
but then as soon as he becomes Sultan, he sends them off.
There's one line I didn't catch till the second watch, which actually explains it, which obviously they should have done more of. Remember back in his first major scene, after, you know, he does the quick diamond in the rough during the beginning where they first go to the cave. But then remember when he's like in the dungeons with you bring me rough but no diamonds, and then that guy, like, they have a little discussion and he says, but you're second, you should be happy. And he says, no, you don't understand what I've had to suffer through. One line in there which they obviously should have made more of, he said that he spent 5 years in a Sherabad prison. So we've got revenge motivation. He's mad at the people of Sherabad for throwing him in jail. That's why he probably killed their queen. And right, exactly.
He's mad because they punished him for his crimes.
Well, you know. When do villains ever really think about that? You're talking details.
I know, but they could have. Yeah, they definitely could have played that up a little more.
Right.
I'm sure I heard that in the moment, but it didn't click because then later on he's trying to invade.
We didn't even know.
I feel like they could have given us a little more detail as to why he had it out for these people.
Because every time he does anything, it's Sherabad, and which also is, you know, Jasmine's mother's home. So that's presumably why he, you know, probably got rid of her mother and is now trying to get them to invade there for revenge for what they did. So that they didn't make enough of it at all, but I'm gathering what they were going for.
Yeah, I mean, I also just took the assumption that he had, you know, part of his wanting to be, you know, number one in the room was also just like he also had, you know, general conqueror ambitions as well. So right. To be once he got that one kingdom, he wasn't going to be happy with just that.
He was going to take as much as he could. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that the classic, like, insecure leader thing? I mean, you've got someone who's got all this power, and he's still insecure about it. I mean, we won't get into current politics, but you could think of that. But there's lots of that throughout history. People who, I'm never happy if anyone, like, doesn't understand I'm the most powerful. If anyone's better than me, if I'm number two. Like, that's a pretty standard story. And I think it worked. And it gives him at least more motivation than he had in the original. Even if you don't know the revenge thing, I thought that really worked, and I liked it a lot. I also liked, in general, just his take on the character. It's very dark and brooding in a way that I liked. I thought worked well especially for this actor. I don't think the Jonathan Freeman mustache twirling of the original would have worked at all in live action if you tried to do that. Although, admittedly, they had the same actor.
For sure.
They had the same actor on Broadway, by the way, playing Jafar, and he was really good. But I don't think it would. You could do that on Broadway. You can be silly, but like if you'd done that in the movie live, it would have just been weird, especially with the Iago and all that. So, I think his more brooding darkness works. Although it's an interesting contrast because his voice is kind of high for like a villain, which I thought was kind of neat. You have a dark character with a kind of higher voice, which was kind of neat.
Yeah. So I kind of have a hard time. Expressing kind of how Jafar, and because it's from critics I've heard both sides, where people that liked him and then people that hate him and thought like he was just terrible in whatever he was trying to do. I don't mind like the high voice at all, and then kind of this praise that we've had over his change in backstory. I agree with, and I kind of liked adding that motivation to it. I think the main like criticism I can point to is that he didn't quite feel menacing to me, and like there was never a time where I was really scared of him. And part of that can be because it's still a kids movie, like so.
And we know how it ends.
Yeah, so the level of measure for scariness is going to be different,
right,
than what I'm used to, but. I think that's a legitimate criticism I can like point to and say like this part didn't quite work for me, and it's part of the original too, where the silly little hypnosis with like the spitty eyes or whatever it's not that interesting to me, and I just didn't quite feel it. No, it would have. I think even though we got more backstory, it would have been more. If it would have been better if we gotten a little more. Always could use more villain story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that song would have really made a difference. Maybe that was a mistake. Who knows? Who knows? The song may have been nothing. It may have been something totally different. We're guessing.
May have been shit.
Right. They cut it out.
One final thing I wanted to say was just around. Do you think this is the end of the story, or do you think there could be a return of Jafar live action style?
Didn't it feel like they were setting that up directly?
No.
I felt like it.
I mean, as narratively, or just like, do you think they would do that? Because all that stuff was like direct to video, and it was cheap.
Right.
It
was direct to video,
name like voice actors.
Yeah.
True, it was direct to video, but then it was one of the most successful direct to videos.
Mm-hmm. Ever.
Yeah, true. Well, right enough, Simba's Pride did well too. But with Return of Jafar, it was, as you were saying, Adam, quite cheap, and the story. I mean, Aladdin's almost beheaded in the story. But yeah, I was sort of thinking, could they do that? I'm just wondering that they've not done it so far, but I'm just curious if they would ever consider, sequels to the reimagining movies,
or just making a brand new sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it feels like they were going kind of both ways. Because on one hand, if they're going to do a sequel, then the genie doesn't have his powers anymore, so that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, that's the whole issue.
But on the other hand,
I mean. Yeah.
I think in terms of their money making plans, they're more focused on they have makes that they can do that they're just more focused on that.
Right.
Then there's no need to go to the well of
maybe 5 years down the line,
over
And they've got a lot of movies
and
to
whatever.
That said,
Right.
That said, I think they made a big deal when Jafar is getting defeated and he's falling into the lamp. I mean, he makes a big, "I will not forget you, boy. Mark my words. I will not forget what you have done to me." I mean, they made a big deal of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's standard villain. I mean, I don't know. They all do that.
Yeah, but I mean, here it felt to me like he was directly going, "Sequel's coming."
So the way they do that is on Disney Plus as an animated, whatever or something. Like I don't think they do that with a cast like this again.
You're right.
Maybe.
I mean, unless it's like some sort of weird mini series or something. The main issue is again, Genie's powers are gone, so you lose like a huge portion of that. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys remember like the animated series they had as a kid. Like that was a lot of fun, but it was basically like Genie, like nothing changed. Like he was wearing the clasps on his arm again. He just wasn't a slave.
Right. And Dan Castellino was the voice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And I
can see them
Will
going
Smith
either way.
is the one they paid for this, right? So if you come back without these people having signed the picture deal, you're going to have to pay them all more.
Oh, good point.
True. I mean, at the very least, I feel like they were leaving their options very open. And,
Yeah. I think,
narratively.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah. I'm sure I imagine that it's written in their contract an option for a sequel at a reasonable price. But yeah, I just doubt they'll pull the trigger on it.
Like, it probably depends on how much money they make. I mean, if it ends up being another $1 billion movie, I mean, can you blame them if they want to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Frozen is getting an actual in-theater sequel. And I mean, when was the last time Disney did that? I mean, Toy Story, that was Pixar before Disney. Now we've got, what do you call it? Incredibles has done that. Like, they're a little bit more open to it than they used to be.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess Frozen is probably, the fastest, is the fast track one, but the other sequels, have been, waiting a long time for Incredibles. And then when Toy Story 3 finally came, and I just feel like they kind of these ones are making money, but, they're doing so as, as the popular original. Just think that kind of what the numbers are showing them is going to lead them to, keep doing the makes without doing
they've got this
weird
for
sequels
years to come.
That said, though, 5 years
Little
down
Mermaid, Mulan, all that.
At the rate they're going, though, they're going to burn through those in a few years. So I could see in 5 years them going, maybe we can afford Will Smith for one more if we can make another, $800 million.
No, they'll just make another Pirates movie.
God.
I love that first movie. I still do. I still love the first Pirates movie. But
they were fun.
I like the trilogy.
I love all three. Yeah, I like the trilogy in general.
I think the second two you kind of have to watch together. Johnny Depp. I think, but
yeah. I mean, even with the story elements that like the action in those two movies is so good. It's similar to. I mean, they're better than Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull was, but even in that shitty Indiana Jones movie, you still have that car chasing in the jungle, which is incredible. So they have good aspects to it, and I always liked the mythology of the Pirates movies. It was fun adding to that.
All from a theme park ride.
We got Star Wars every other year and 10 Marvel movies a year.
Well, I mean, isn't that what corporations do?
Yeah, I think we'll see how the Disney Plus thing works with like the Loki show and like some of the like the MCU shows they're doing with the actual actors. If those work well and they're fairly inexpensive, like maybe you do see some sort of like mini series or something from these, or potentially straight to streaming sequel. I mean, Will Smith did Bright, and that went straight to Netflix. So I mean, you can get names that do these movies now if you do it right. I just don't think this is necessarily on their docket.
I feel like if they're gonna do one, this would be the one, because this was the first. I think this was the very first one they did. The first sequel they did, direct to video.
I think you're right.
So I feel like if they're going, I mean, I don't feel like any of the others that I've seen so far so clearly set up a sequel like this one did. Now that doesn't mean they're going to do it or they're thinking about it. But here's the question: if they do it, would you see it?
Oh yeah.
No. Well, I guess if it has all of the if it has all the cast, maybe. If it includes all the original cast, but like
you won't have any of the songs, you won't have all the the
right,
stuff you love
they
about.
gotta right, but yeah, even then they have to write all new songs, don't they? Like, I mean,
there's a couple in
yeah, and a lot of the
Jafar, but none of them
nostalgia's
are any
gone.
good.
Like,
yeah,
is there like a return of Jafar nostalgia that's like people are really itching to to get into?
no,
I don't even remember.
Maybe not.
I don't remember it at all.
Right, I don't know if I ever saw it or not, to be honest. So.
But ultimately,
there you have it.
Wouldn't see it.
if they can make even $400 million on it, would it be worth doing? I mean, from their point of view, from a business point of view,
right?
from a creative point of view, maybe not. But
Depends, because they spent about 200 million on this one.
right. But then you add all the toys, you add the streaming rights. You'll be able to stream and sell videos forever. Lots of merchandise.
A lot of conventions.
Yeah. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get more theme park rides out of it.
Oh yeah. So are we done?
Yeah, I'd say close it out.
Yep, I think that did it. We're into sequel land, so.
Okay, well, thanks guys for joining me on the podcast, and thanks everyone for listening. Vassals of Kingsgrave will be back next time.
Thanks, Glen.
Thanks, Glen.
Thanks, Glenn.
Bye.